Hello everyone and welcome back to ranking the For Honor Warriors to find out who is the deadliest For Honor Warrior. We went through half of them last time, numbers 28 through 15. Today we're going to be going from 14 all the way to number 1, who is the deadliest. I hope you guys are excited. I'm super excited to go into this with you. Before we do, some quick ground rules to remind you. First of all, only looking at default armor and weapons. We're not looking at any other armor variations. We are also, for the most part, going to be ignoring the feats. I'm not bringing the feats into this just because I want to look at this from a historical aspect. I will only involve the lore in a limited capacity if it helps provide context for the character's personality, motives, and actions. So that's what we're going to be looking at here. A lot of positive feedback from the last half, so let's see how y'all enjoy this half. This is finding out who is
the deadliest warrior.
Let's jump into it. Going on to number 14, the Centurion. Okay, so some of y'all might be thinking, why is Centurion number 14? He shouldn't be here. He should be much higher. There are a couple reasons. But first, let's talk about the good things about Centurion. First of all, he's got good armor and he's got good experience. A lot like the Zhan Hu, he'd be more prepared. He'd be prepared for all kinds of warfare scenarios. He understands the nature of the battlefield. He's a good warrior. But unlike JJ, who's a general who understands the macro, Centurion is more the equivalent of a sergeant or a colonel or a lieutenant, someone who is of a rank higher than the common soldier, but not so high that he is off the battlefield. A Centurion is going to be used to fighting alongside his soldiers. The Gladius is also a pretty effective weapon. It's heavy, it's strong, it's got a double-edged side, and it's got a pointy end to stab, so very effective weapon, very effective armor for the most part. He has decent armor, but here's where things start to fall apart for our Centurion. A couple people were voting that Centurion would be up there in like the top 5. Here's the reason he's not. First of all, his armor is not all-encompassing, and his armor is not going to be as good as some of the other characters we're going to see later. Secondly, he's lacking his shield. If he had his shield, his Skoda shield, he would be way up there. He would be a monster, but he doesn't have it, and that hurts him because the Roman line is designed as a unit. You know, you'd have your legionnaires, your Centurion. They'd all be lined up, shields ready. They'd move up on the enemy, and then as the enemy's bouncing off their shield, they're just thrusting forward with those gladiuses and doing damage. Without the shield, they're much more exposed. The Gladius is still a very short-range weapon. It's an effective weapon, but it's very short-range. It's actually a shorter range than the Hammer of the Jormungandr. And once you get within range to use the Gladius, at that point, you're putting yourself in the range of a lot of other weapons that are just as dangerous and could do damage to your armor. Plus, the other facet is, again, looking at the default armor, he's got a face mask that's covering his face. First of all, real Centurion wouldn't wear these, but since we're going off of the For Honor characters, those visors are going to limit visibility, which is not good, especially since he doesn't have a shield to hide behind, which would be very helpful for him for wearing that mask. And finally, the other big thing, he's a puncher. The big thing about Centurion is he likes to punch people. I'm not against taking a Kestis and going to town on someone with your fist. That's fine, as long as you realize that you were exposing your arm to be hacked off if you do that, you know? Rule of thumb, if you have a weapon and you're in war, use that weapon. Don't rely on fists or kicks to do your fighting for you. Usually you want to rely on your weapon. So, besides, the Centurion honestly is going to be more used to group style combat anyway. That's just the way they function. That's the way that the Centurion is used to fighting. They're not used to one-on-one combat. That's going to work against them in this. But Centurion, I love him. I love the Centurion's character, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized, as cool as he is, he's just not going to cut it for being in the top 5. Moving on. Number 13. Conqueror. So the Conqueror's armor is pretty basic. It's not as all-encompassing as someone like the Centurion, but he has a nice size shield to compensate for that. The Hida shield is a good shield. It's very well protective. I like it. The big problem that we have with the Conqueror, though, is his flail. Now, the cool thing about the flail is that he can use it to do damage to an enemy even if they're armored. That thing is a nightmare to anything within its range. It's going to be very effective in the swing. The problem is, one, it's a weapon that requires a wind-up. So you'll notice that the Conqueror needs to wind up that flail to make it a threat. If he's just swinging it, it's not going to have the same amount of power, so he's really got to do the wind-up to make it effective. And second, look, flails can be just as dangerous to the user as they are to the enemy. And I know a lot of people have messaged me saying, oh, come on, Conqueror's flails aren't that dangerous. I've used a flail before. Yeah, here's the thing. That's cool, and if you've never had a problem with a flail, that's fine, but we're not talking about little swings. We're talking about a full-on wind-up and a thrashing strike with a heavy ball and chain that if it bounces off their shield and hits you in the head, you've now hurt yourself. The problem that the Conqueror faces with his weapon is that the more he can't just focus on the enemy, he also has to focus on what's in his hand. Too many distractions going on at once. So for me, while the Conqueror has an effective armor set, an effective shield, his weapon is going to be a double-edged sword, if you'll pardon the joke there. It's just it could come back to bite him in the butt, and that's going to be something that the Conqueror shouldn't have to worry about if he were carrying something like a mace or a sword or something like that. But no, he's carrying a flail, which is fine as long as you respect the fact that that thing could become a hindrance. So that's the problem with the Conqueror. Number 12, Valkyrie. Let me tell you what I like about Valkyrie. Valkyrie's armor is basic but effective. All-encompassing leather armor, solid helmet, and the girl's carrying an excellent weapon combo. A spear and shield is it's a tale as old as time. It is an excellent combination to use. The shield's a little small, I gotta admit. I don't like how small the shield is. That's probably why I bumped her down to number 12 spot. That shield isn't going to be very protective. I mean, it will protect against some basic attacks, but it requires a lot of instinctive sight. Like, for example, the heater shield that the Conqueror's wearing, that would have been better. The round shield that the Warlord has, that would have been better. Any of those shields would have been better than that one. But, you know what? At least she has a shield, which is good. And the spear provides good range. The funny thing is, though, the way she uses it in combat is a little weird. When she uses it in combat, she's just doing these swinging, sweeping motions, and that's not really the way you want to use a spear. You want to thrust with it. So her light attacks are actually the correct way you'd want to use a spear. You'd kind of pull a Spartan maneuver. You'd hunker down behind your shield, and you'd thrust with that spear. And if they dodge the spear thrust and they try to get into you, that's when you use your shield and block the blow. This is something that I brought up with Nobushi. Remember how I said that Nobushi is a really good long-range weapon, but if they get within the effective range of that Naginata, suddenly it loses some of its effectiveness, suddenly you're exposed. Well, think about this. Nobushi isn't wearing armor, and she has no shield. So if she misses with that stab and the enemy gets within her reach, she's done. She's history. Not only is Valkyrie armored, she has a shield. So even if they get within her reach, she is taken care of, which is excellent. The reason that I don't put her high on the list, because I really did want to, is for two reasons. Number one, she's not going to be able to put the full force behind that spear that she really needs to without both hands. And she does have one hand on the shield, which is fine. That's not a bad thing. You know what? I'd rather have the protective shield than full force thrusting. And the second reason is because the spear's not going to be effective against some of the armored warriors coming up. So that's the only reason she's a little lower on the list. But otherwise, Valkyrie, excellent choice. Number 11, Zhan Hu. Some people were saying in the comment section that Zhan Hu should have been inferior to Orochi. Let me explain why I disagree and why Zhan Hu takes the 11th spot. First of all, he has a superior weapon. The Changdao is a much better weapon than the katana because it is more durable, it is longer reach, it has a much longer range, and it's light enough to be used for long periods of time, which is something that I think gives it a slight edge. Also, it is versatile. It is double-edged. It is a piercer and a slasher. It is an excellent weapon to be used. It is a weapon that can be used from a distance or to get in close. It's a good weapon. And plus, we've seen Zhan Hu is very mobile. He's a very agile warrior who can move around his opponent very quickly. His armor isn't great. It's mostly silk robes with a chest and shoulder protector. But let me tell you, and while I don't like that, don't get me wrong, I don't like that he has such limited armor. Let me also tell you another reason he gets up here. Like I said, I don't want to talk feats, but the lore of the Zhan Hu is that they are alchemists who specialize in pyrotechnics. Leaving out the feats, I'm not going to talk about the feats, just leaving out the feats. If they really are specialists in pyrotechnics and fire-based weaponry, that can't be ignored. That's part of their lore. We have to acknowledge it. And because we have to acknowledge it, a fire-based projectile in the battlefield that could be a game changer, you know? And the ancient Chinese warriors were known to use ancient forms of gunpowder and firearms and pyro-based weapons, fire-based weapons. If Zhan Hu has access to these, then they could be a game changer for his character. And that's something that might make up for his lack of armor. Now, again, I'm not going into his feats. I'm just saying, because this is what the lore established, we need to make that clear. We need to allow that for him. But yes, I do admit his armor is lacking for me, so I'll give you that. But I think the sword and his possible ability to call upon pyrotechnical advantage gives him an edge. Now, if you disagree with that, that's fine. You can say so in the comments. I'll totally understand why you think so. But because I'm allowing for that based on the lore, let's move on. Number 10, Highlander. All right, so why did I put Highlander above? Well, for one thing, he's much more well armored, just much better leather and scaled armor. His sword is longer, it's heavier. That claymore is a monster weapon. The Highlander is packing much more physical strength than the Zhan Hu. He's just going to be a beast of burden. This guy's going to walk out onto the field and scare the crap out of anyone he comes in contact with. He's got a very strong offense, but here's where his problem comes in. That sword is massively heavy, and I don't care how burly and tough you are. You carry around a huge sword like that long enough and keep swinging it around long enough, eventually you're going to get worn out. And here's the funny thing. The claymore he's using is actually too big. It's bigger than most actual claymores were. So this guy, and we even see him in his fighting mechanics, he's slugging that thing. He's just working so hard to swing that thing. It's actually kind of funny watching, because I'm like, you know, if your sword were just a little smaller, you'd have a good time there, man. It'd be a lot easier for you. It's hard for him to hide behind his weapon, because the more he holds that thing up to defend himself, the more it gets beaten down on. It's eventually going to end up hurting him, you know? Eventually, it's going to wear him down, and that's the problem. He's a big boy, but he's packing too big a weapon, and I think that's his big weakness here. Don't get me wrong, I think Highlander is an excellent contender. I think he's got a lot to bring, but because his weapon is a little too heavy for what he needs to do, and I fear the fatigue aspect will come to get him, gotta put him in the 10 spot. But hey, we're now in the top 10 guys, and if anyone deserved to be at number 10, it is Highlander. So who we got next? Let's get into it. I'm excited. Number 9. Gryphon. All right, so people were probably expecting Gryphon to be higher on the list, but here's why. First of all, let's talk about what's good. Decent armor, no helmet, which makes me mad. He was a Lawbringer. He should know better. But decent armor, a large, powerful melee weapon that has decent range and good striking ability. Let me tell you the big problems with him, though. Number 1, again, like I said, lack of helmet. And that armor is not as good as what we're going to see later. Just not quite. Second, the Bardiche is not a good weapon defensively. It is the equivalent of an executioner's axe. What would happen in history is if you used a Bardiche, quite often what would happen is you'd bring a rifle along with you, or an arquebus. You'd set up the Bardiche, sticking the pole into the ground, and then using the top to rest your rifle butt or rifle muzzle, and then firing from there. And then after your enemy's wounded or injured, or you've run out of ammo, then you'll throw down your gun and run at him with the Bardiche to finish the job. It was the backup weapon. But if you have an enemy coming at you waiting to hit you and you use the Bardiche to block, I don't think the Bardiche is going to last very long. It's very heavily weighted on one end, not properly balanced. I think it's going to become a hindrance after a while. I think it's going to become a heavy weapon, and a dude who's not as well armored as he could be carrying it. So... And also, some of the moves he pulls off with that Bardiche are not moves you could actually do. Those side dodge heavy attacks, those forward spinning overhead attacks. Bardiche is way too heavy to pull that kind of stuff off in real life. And secondly, the kick. Everyone goes nuts over his kick. You want to know what would actually happen in real life if you put a Gryphon, a real like Bardiche warrior, and a Orochi, a katana samurai, against each other, and this moron decided to try throwing a kick at his enemy? Yeah, that katana user is going to dodge out of the way and hack off a leg. Okay, that's gonna be the outcome. You never throw in martial arts, in weapons usage, you're taught to be behind your weapon. You're taught you stay behind your weapon because your weapon acts like a defense between you and the other guy. If you decide you're going to stick your leg out from behind your weapon, you're asking your enemy to cut it off. The only reason you would ever want to do that is if you're in the weapon lock and you can afford to do it. But otherwise, that's a dumb move to pull off in a real fight. It leaves him vulnerable. It's just a lot of his moves don't feel like they should be real moves. So a lot of the power Gryphon is boasting, I think, is a little over-exaggerated. But at least we will give him the 9 spot. He is our number 9. Number 8. Warlord. All right, so Warlord. Let me tell you what I love about Warlord. That shield. Oh, that's such a good shield. The round shield is one of the best shields made. It's versatile. It's light enough to be carried into battle. The way you have a fist hold in the center grip is excellent for deflection. I wish the Warlord used that in game more often. It's an excellent defensive shield, and the nice thing is, in actual history, there would be leather strapped around the edge of the shield so that if an enemy comes down with their sword or axe and hacks it into the side of the shield, the leather might catch the weapon, and now it's stuck in the shield, leaving your opponent, uh-oh, I'm in trouble, and then you get him with your sword. And that's the other thing. He's carrying what looks like an Ulthbert sword or a broadsword, one of the two. And I think it is in that we see our only real problem with Warlord, the only reason he's not higher up. Like the katana, that sword is not going to be good against armor penetration. It's not going to be good armor penetration. Against lightly armored opponents, like, say, the Zhan Hu, the Orochi, the Peacekeeper, yeah, it's going to be useful. It's going to be decent. Against some of the guys coming up later, including ones like the Conqueror or the Centurion, it's not going to be that good. But what he makes up for it is with the shield. In fact, I'd argue the shield is almost a better weapon than his sword in some cases, if used correctly. He's also well armored. We got to give the Warlord credit for his better armor. He's actually wearing leather protection, chainmail, gambeson in some cases, and a helmet. Give the dude credit. He came to this ready to fight an actual war, unlike Raider. So, Warlord, giving you points for that. You made the number 8 spot. Congratulations, big man. You are a bear among Vikings, okay? Love you. Number 7, Tiandi. All right. Really had to think about where Tiandi would fall because it's a tough one. On the one hand, his armor is phenomenal. This is easily the best armor of all the Wu Lin. In fact, it's better than some of the Knight's armor. This armor is so well put together. It is all-encompassing. He has a helmet. He has the shoulder and arm protectors. He has the chest protectors. He has leg protectors. The dude is coming in like a tank. And he still has the agility to move like an assassin, flowing like water. His movements are so fast. His armor is so well protected. He's skilled and disciplined. He knows his martial arts. He knows how to fight. He knows how to evade danger and then retaliate. It is so excellent. I love the Tiandi's look. It's fantastic. On the other hand, that sword. Look, I don't dislike the Dao. The Dao is a perfectly fine sword, but unlike some of the other swords we've seen, it's single-edged, which means that only one side is lethal. While it is properly weighted, it's not going to be good at armor penetration, especially if used one-handed. If used two-handed, it's better, but it's still not going to penetrate armor very easily. And frankly, the range is going to be a problem. Now, the nice thing is he is wearing armor, so if he does get within the range of his opponent's weapon, he can take some damage. He can afford to take some blows, but that range, man, it's just going to be a problem for him. I think he's got the movement and the armor to keep him alive and to keep him surviving, but that sword might become a hazard over time. Eventually, the dude's luck might run out, but in the general sense, love the Tiandi exponentially. He's a deadly, effective martial arts warrior of the Wu Lin. Easily, in my opinion, just the best Wu Lin we got going on here. He is the deadliest Wu Lin, bar none. Number 6. The Shugoki, the big boy. All right, good chest protection armor and solid strength. This dude's a tank. He's coming in with shoulder protectors, a mask that it won't really protect anything, but hey, it looks cool, and chest protection. So he's got some armor. He can trade some blows, and he's got the meat to help him do it. The Kanabo. His Kanabo is bigger than what an actual Kanabo should be, and it shows because he has such a hard time swinging it around. But here's what I love. Not only can he exchange blows with the enemy, given his size, strength, and armor, but the Kanabo is one of the few weapons that I think could do massive damage even to an armored opponent, even to ones as good as Lawbringer and Warmonger. That thing will break bones regardless of armor. That thing is a massive wrecking ball of a weapon, and the Shugoki wields it expertly. Because of this, I think that the Kanabo makes him almost OP. But the reason I put him at number 6 is this. Even though he is decently armored, he's not well enough armored. There are certain spots where he is vulnerable, and because he's vulnerable in those spots, he can only exchange blows for so long. Eventually, he might make a mistake, he might miss with the swing, and then he's exposed. So why do I keep him at the top like that? Because you're dealing with a dude that has a weapon that can damage even our top tier warriors. When you have a weapon capable of doing that, mad respect, because again, even though he's vulnerable, you have to assume he's going to give you the chance to get there, and given his massive girth and that massive weapon, he might not ever give you that chance. So, Shugoki, you made it to our number 6 spot, and you earned it, big boy. I love you. All right, moving on. We're down to the top 5. The top 5 for Honor Warriors. Here we go, guys. Number 5, Kensei. Oh, Kensei. So, your armor is great. Love the armor. Good armor protection. You're wearing a Kabuto helmet, which is excellent. You're wearing a Do chest guard, which is excellent. The Soide shoulder protectors. You're very well armored. You're quick. Maybe not as agile as Zhan Hu, but you've got good mobility. You have a good way of controlling the battlefield. And then you have an excellent long-range sword in the Nodachi. An excellent weapon, by the way. Good way of keeping your opponent at a distance. Good way to mix up your game. Very versatile weapon. Love it. Problem with it. It is a single-edged blade, which makes it a little limited. Can trade blows okay, but his armor isn't perfect. Again, and for Honor, it's apparently wooden. But let's assume for a minute that it's not wooden. It's still really, really good. Maybe not without some holes. Maybe not without some areas that could be improved. I think that the one thing that he needs to be worried about is that he doesn't have good armor penetration capability. The Nodachi is a wonderful weapon, but there's going to be some armor that it's not going to cut through well. Like when we get into some of the steel armor that we're going to look at in a minute, it's just not going to be as effective. And without that effectiveness, sorry, Kensei, you're out of a job. Honestly, I think of all the warriors we've seen so far, up till him, he's probably going to be the most deadly in the sense that his mobility, his armor, and his range with his weapon is by far superior. But now it's going to come into the game of superior armament. So, great job, Kensei. You earned your spot here at number 5. But we got to move on. Number 4, the Black Prior. Oh, Black Prior. Solid defensive shield that makes for excellent countering. The Kite Shield, one of the best shields made in history. Shad even argues it is the best shield made in history. Now, the sword does lack range, okay? It's a much shorter sword than I would like, but guess what? I don't care, because that shield is just so all-protecting. It covers the entire body. Every other shield we've seen so far only covers part of the body. This one covers the whole body. He can just hunker down behind that shield, take damage, and then hack at the enemy. And according to this world, that shield has razors along the edge. Now, when we did Shinobi, I said we were basing it on the way the Kusarigama is presented in-game. We're not talking about the real Kusarigama, we're talking about the Kusarigama in-game. So we're going to talk about the shield in-game, not the real Kite Shield. And if the Kite Shield in-game has sharp edges to cut off limbs, you've got a second weapon in your other hand, and it doubles as a shield. That's effective. Now, he doesn't have full plate armor all over him, which some would argue is of hindrance, but that's what the Kite Shield is designed to make up for. He's got some chainmail, he's got plate mail on his arms, and he's got a great helmet. Frankly, well, no, he doesn't have a helmet in this variation. He has a robe over the head and a crown, which isn't bad. I do think that it's still okay. The robe actually looks very intimidating, and it looks like what a Crusader Knight would wear. And so, yeah, okay, I'll grant you that the head is probably the exposed portion. But the shield, I think, makes up for all that. I think the shield, he's easily the best shield hero in the game. I think we can all agree on that. He is a deadly demon, okay? Love the Black Prior. Number 4 spot, definitely earned. Number 3. Warden. The armor is very protective except for the chest area, which is more plate and mesh combined. That mesh Gambison style armor is kind of an exposure. Now, like I said, Gambison is still a decent armor, but again, that is an exposed spot, and you'll see why that matters in our next contender. The sword. The long sword is a balanced, sharp, excellent blade. Now, some people would argue the longsword isn't actually sharp. It's more of a bludgeoning weapon. That's a myth. The reason people think that is because longswords, as sharp as they were, can't cut through armor very well. So people assumed that the swords couldn't actually cut anything. They were just bludgeoning weapons, heavy bludgeoning weapons. That's not true. They were very sharp. They could cut things very well. It's just they're not going to cut through solid steel, you know? So that's why they can be used with the hilt to end them rightly, to strike through or bludgeon the armor or to puncture through the armor. It's such a unique, versatile, flexible weapon, and they use it expertly. And they also make use of their shoulder guard. I've never seen that in night combat where you just shoulder charge someone. It's a little silly, I admit. But hey, at least you're making use of your armor besides just, I'm safe behind my armor. You're actually making use of that, which is clever. The helmet restricts a little bit of vision, but hey, with that sword and with that armor, I think we can forgive it a little bit. It's not like Gladiator or Centurion where their face mask restricts vision, but they don't have anything to help protect themselves like a shield or chest protection in the case of Gladiator. So gotta give credit to Warden there. Excellent warrior, excellently designed, excellently armored. But even Warden's armor pales in comparison to number 2, Warmonger. Oh yeah, y'all knew she was going to be up here. Easily one of the best armored characters in the game. Unlike Warden, she is wearing full plate encompassing armor. It is superior to Warden in that the chest is not just mesh and chainmail mixed with plate. It is full plate mail. You can see some chainmail under her armor, and her hand is a gauntlet with claws on it that can be used to slash at the enemy if they get in too close. Remember how I talked about one of the weaknesses of a long-range weapon is if an enemy gets within the range of their enemy, then that becomes a problem. Well, even though she's carrying a Zweihander, which is a decent cousin of the longsword, a great sword that can be used to great effect, if they get within the range of that sword, now she can just literally bitch slap them. You know, it's going to be so effective. But the other thing is, the other reason why I think she gets the edge over Warden is not just her armor, but it's also her sword. The Zweihander sword is wavy for a reason. It's not just like that for design. It's like that because the waves have a function. If someone comes down on her with a sword and she uses the Zweihander to block, the waves create added friction on the enemy's blade, which can buffer or hurt or incapacitate the enemy for a second, which gives the Warmonger a chance to counterattack. So that's the beauty of the Zweihander. That's why I think she gets the edge over the Warden in that sense. Plus, keeping in mind her personality, she is vicious. She has no respect for the weak. She will not be merciful. She will not be kind. She's going to be brutal. Unlike the Warden, who, by the lore of the show, has a code of honor and ethics. He may show mercy. He may hold back a little if he felt that the person could be redeemed. Warmonger doesn't care. In fact, if she thinks they could be redeemed, that's even more reason to kill them. You don't do peace with the Warmonger, you know? It's that kind of thing. But that's number 2. Good job, Warmonger. You made it. You did it. You're the war mommy who made it all the way. But what's the war mommy without the daddy? Ladies and gentlemen, number 1, the bar none deadliest warrior in For Honor is Lawbringer, the Law Daddy. And do I even need to explain why? His armor is the best in the game, all-encompassing, thick steel metal, designed to block any oncoming blade attack. Sure, the Shugoki's Kanabo might do damage to him, and it could, no question, but this dude is a walking tank, and good luck getting close with his weapon. The poleaxe or halberd, whichever you call it, whichever one you want to go with. It has the range to keep an enemy at a distance. It can stab with the spiked tip. It can hack with the axe tip. It has a poker on the back, a spike on the back to puncture it's an armored opponent. He can shove with the shaft to knock an opponent off balance. And if they get inside of his range, he's got the armor to hold them back. The dude is the definition of a walking tank. honestly, he may be one of the first OG heroes to come out. And I know For Honor has released a lot of great heroes ever since, but none can compare to the monstrosity that is the Law Daddy. And adding on to that, again, I said I'm not going to talk about feats. I'm not going to talk about feats, but if I were, I would bring up his explosive arsenal. Okay? That's another, again, I'm not talking feats, so that's not playing into this, but I don't even, but think about that for a minute. How great are you that I can still call you the best and not even get to your ordnance? Okay? So that does it, guys. That is it. That is my ranked list of the For Honor heroes, ranked all the way from bottom to top, from Shinobi all the way at the bottom to Law Daddy all the way at the top. And let me be clear about something, guys. If your main isn't where you thought it would be on my list, I'm sorry about that. You know, it stinks, and I get that. And if you want to discuss it with me in the comments and say, hey man, I think that maybe this should have been a little bit further up or a little bit further down, fair enough. It's your opinion, and this is my opinion. Please respect my opinion as I respect yours. And know this, guys, despite the fact that some of these heroes may not be at the top of the list, I still think that all of these heroes, in one way or another, are fantastic. They're all unique, they're all creative, and they're all versatile and special additions to For Honor, which I still say is a fantastic game despite its flaws. It's the ability to make lists like this about the game that still make it so much fun for me to play even now. I hope you guys enjoyed this list. I hope you guys like the outcome. Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Please share in the comments respectfully. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button if you haven't already. I really appreciate the subscribes. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, and leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Thank you all so much for watching, and this is the Raven Knight signing off. I will catch you guys in my next video. Take care.